Hi, my name is Shari Doherty, and I'm a lady in red, in Act 2 of my career and living my best life. My perspective on life and behaviors have been governed by who I was as a child, who I became, and who I am still striving to be. People my age are beautiful, bold, confident, and full of wisdom, and truly, the encore of the story of your life is still when the best songs are yet to be sung. My mission in this podcast is to shine the spotlight on people like me, have real conversations about reinvention stories, and inspire you to continue to follow your dreams regardless of your age. I'm doing it for Daisy. Who are you doing it for? Welcome to today's episode of the Encore podcast. Today, I actually have with me both of my adult children. We are about to enter another new era. There is a plot list in the lives of the Dohertys. So I have asked both of my children to join me today to share their side of the story, and we will exchange perspectives on the upcoming changes in our lives. So welcome, Sarah Marie.
Hello.
And welcome, Kieran.
Hey, how's it going?
Thank you so much for tuning in today. And I thought I would share an update, but there is a plot twist. I believe when Sarah Marie did her engagement episode, she did share that she was very likely moving out of province with her fiance. And that's okay. I've made peace with that, obviously, because I adore him and I know they have a beautiful life ahead of them.
And she doesn't like me that much, so she's totally cool with me leaving the province.
Actually, 0% true.
Yeah.
However, on top of that, then, Kieran has now decided that he's going to be leaving the province.
I sure am, and I'm pretty pumped about it.
I know you are, which means that ultimately both of my children are moving west within the next 4 weeks, and we should have an empty nest. It's not going to be completely empty because, as I've shared with our listeners, my mother lives with us, and that is okay. But for all intents and purposes, and for the purposes of this discussion, let's call it an empty nest. So, Sarah Marie, can you share with everybody your update on where you're going, when you're going, and how you're feeling about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what day is it? We're looking right now at like the end of July, and I will be moving in approximately a month at the end of August, which I am very excited about, but I feel like it's creeping up on me very quickly.
I feel
and
that too.
I haven't totally processed it yet. Like, people keep on saying like, "Oh, have you started packing?" And I'm like, "No. I don't even know where I'm going to live, like, let alone packing. Absolutely not. I'll figure that out like 4 days before. I've moved in shorter periods of time. I'm not too worried about it.
Right.
But ultimately, we are moving to Moose Jaw. So Maz is being posted to Moose Jaw for at least a year, potentially 2, depending on his flight path, literally. So we're moving to this area, but I will be working in Regina. I got a full-time job in Regina, so it's about a 45-minute drive from Moose Jaw, so I'll be commuting every day. But the thing is, my job starts at the beginning of September, and Maz's course doesn't start until almost the end of September. And so figuring out logistics of where I'm going to live during that time will be interesting, but Airbnb is looking rather friendly right now. So
You've always been up for a great adventure. And when you do get there and he arrives as well, are you going to be living in military quarters?
yeah, so for the meantime, it seems that we are going to live in the PMQs. And so we'll be in Moose Jaw. We'll be commuting then from Moose Jaw to Regina. We did talk about buying, and obviously with you being a real estate agent, you gave us all the pros and cons and what makes sense for us. But since we don't know how long we're actually staying, I think it makes sense for now to just be in the PMQs. And then if we get posted there for a longer period of time, we'll probably buy a house in the province. And I'm sure Kieran will express this as well. But housing costs out west and just cost of living in general is actually reasonable. Like,
So, yeah, just a side cut on that. But you sent me a listing and said, can this be real? And can you find out about it? Because it was a cute little 2-bedroom house for $90,000.
literally. And it was like, it was so nice. I think it was 2-bedroom, like recently redone, cute little bungalow. And I was like, should I just buy this right
Why
now?
is it
Like
$90,000?
Exactly.
So, of course, I used my resources and I called a fellow REMAX agent out that way. And I said to him, okay, fellow REMAX agent, be honest with me. This is my daughter we're talking about. why is this house so inexpensive? And is this a bad neighborhood? Or would you let your child move into this, even
Is
though
it
she's a grown
haunted?
adult? Also, if she decided to go running at night, would she be safe alone? I always ask those kind of questions.
Makes sense.
And this agent actually said it's a great neighborhood. And yes, you'd be perfectly fine to go running alone at night. He has a couple of investment properties right in that neighborhood. He knows it very well and promised me, pinky swore me actually, virtually, that he would make sure to make a good recommendation when you are ready. But $90,000.
No, literally, there is like a huge Ontario exodus happening right now of people our age who are just looking to get like a head start at life. Like, unfortunately, due to the Ontario economy, between housing and food costs and just cost of living in general, like, I feel like I'm climbing a ladder that is just continually like moving in the same spot. Like we aren't able to
Right.
get ahead anywhere in any situation. And so there's so many people my age moving out west because it's actually reasonable. And so between Kieran and I'm sure we'll both be buying houses out there within the next year or two. And we're both very much looking forward to it.
Right. So let's Kieran tell his side of the story because he's also one of your age group that's moving out west. And this one came out of left field. Not exactly. I know that you've been talking about the idea for a while, but it certainly came up much quicker than I was ready for. And now you're also going before she goes.
Yeah, I'm leaving in like 10, 11 days at this point, which I'm pretty excited about. For a little bit of context, I still go to Queens here in Kingston, which I'm going to have to try and figure out how to still graduate on time, but I've got 1 year left, so that situation should resolve itself over time, which I'll get into in a moment. But I've always expressed, probably for the last, we'll say 8 to 9 months, about wanting to like completely switch up what I'm doing when I'm done school, in terms of like the way I make money, and a lot of it has been podcast related, and I've been doing it for 9 years now, like, and actually getting paid to do it for 7, and I've done it for long enough now that I know whether or not I want to do this for the rest of my life, and if it ends up being lucrative or anything like that, and you know who I like doing it for and whatnot. So yeah, I would say for the most part, I started to think maybe a year or two ago about like wanting to switch up the industry I was working in, especially as I finished school, and looking at that as like a natural opportunity to do so. And then it kind of reared its head more at the end of this or last year and early this year when Sarah Marie and I bought a pretty large company, and we tried to figure out, and we still are trying to figure out how we're going to monetize that. But as time goes on, like until we monetize it in the way that we really want to, we still got to work. And like that's a thing that like I got to gripe with as well too. And as I transition out of doing media production for other people and stuff like that, I really got to figure out like how am I going to have a source of income? How am I going to pay off my student loans, everything like that? Like I do have bills to pay at the end of the day, and
Yeah.
as you're aware, it's not cheap being Kieran. Like at the end of every year for the last 2 to 3 years, I go through how much left my bank account, and it's, I definitely need a job and able to support that because I don't have much left in savings. And so, yeah, at the beginning of this year, Sarah Marie and I bought a company that's quite large in the U.S. and we're running it, and like it's right now it's doing pretty well. Like in the last like couple weeks, we've been making a decent amount of money, but like not something for Sarah Marie and I to like build a life off of yet.
Right.
But the person who owned it before did, and so we want to continue to pursue that, and we're doing it in a lot of really cool ways, which are happening right now as you and Dad are hearing on a daily and weekly basis. Like we're making some big moves, and I'm
amazing.
super excited to show everybody at a later date what we've been working on when the time comes. But in the meantime, like I really started to think at the beginning of this year when that happened, like, all right, almost all of my money is leaving my bank account in order to buy this company with Sarah Marie. I've got a couple $1,000s left at the end of this. That's going to last me until this date. What am I going to do after this date if it's not going to be media production and podcasting? And the one thing that I really thought was like, I love working with my hands. And like, that was one thing that my dad and I did quite a bit when I was a kid. Maybe I could release the documentary that I made for my class as part of like content in the later date for you or anything like that, along with her eventual documentary that'll be coming out, Sarah Marie's. But we'll talk about that after. And so, yeah, I realized like maybe I want to work in like a bit more of a labor intensive industry where I'm working with my hands every day, and something that's a little bit more like concrete, no pun intended, but yeah, some sort of like construction labor, something like that. And I landed on wanting to maybe work in the oil and gas industry because it's obviously quite large, a lot larger in Alberta than it is in Ontario. And so I started to think maybe I'll move to Alberta when I'm done school a year from today, pretty much, or 8-9 months from now. And I started applying for jobs. I went and got all my certifications if I wanted to work in the oil fields, and I applied for probably I want to say 80 to 90 jobs on the internet about like working in the oil fields, and you're always told to apply for everything just in case you end up, being given a shot. But I
Right.
applied for a lot of things that I knew I wasn't going to get just because I wasn't qualified to do. Like I've never operated a drill pipe. Like that's just not something that I've done. So I probably wasn't going to get those jobs. But a lot of the entry level jobs that pay decent, like I maybe could get them. And if they're trying to hire the right person, I believed that I was the right person. But at the time, I was not hearing back at all from anybody up until probably 2 weeks ago. And so the one thing that I will say is I talked to a couple people who work in that industry, and I sent them my resume, and they were like, all right, this is great. If you want to work, for a digital production company, like anyone would gladly hire you. But in terms of working in the oil fields, running a social media page, not that applicable. Doing the things that you're doing, flying around the world, shooting content with your sister and stuff like that, not that applicable. It's really cool.
Right.
It's a good story, but I think you need to switch up your resume a little bit to reflect more who you are as a person rather than just like what you've done and your lack of experience in this direct field. And I did. And I know I was saying to you last night, like I was praying and manifesting for the last 95 days that somebody would give me a shot while I've been applying for all these jobs, doing everything else that I've been doing to get ready. And finally I got the call from somebody saying, hey, we want to talk to you. And I knew in that moment, I was like, okay, you've heard back from one person. This has to be everything you do for the next 5 days in order to get ready for it. And the next morning, I ended up having a call with their head of HR, and he goes, all right, tell me about yourself. And I don't know if you guys have heard this phrase, but I know a lot of people my age that like are into hip hop saying it, but they say all the time, like, oh man, that guy was rapping like rent was due. That was me in that situation. Like I had an
Interesting.
answer for everything that they could object on why they shouldn't hire me. And by the end of that 20-minute call, yeah, Sam Marie has something to say.
Give them the example of the objection, that your biggest objection, because that answer that you told me was phenomenal. And I think that is something that people should use in any situation where they get an objection. I was so proud of you when you said that. I was like, oh, that's such a good word.
Yeah, I'll explain that in a sec. To preface that, hey, if you're listening to this and you have a kid and your kid has no experience in any work industry whatsoever, maybe use this at some point because it's not a bad answer at all. And anyone that I've told it to after that, when I was talking to them, they were like, that's probably the best answer you could give. And that's what the head of HR said as well, too. But he said to me, all right, here's the deal. I like you as a person. Everything you've had to say was great thus far. My one objection, and the head of the company's one objection should be, you are 25 years old and you have no experience in the oil and gas industry. Why should we hire you?
Great.
And that was my time to shine.
What did you say?
I mean, I said to him, all right, here's the deal. And this is when I was like, yeah, definitely rapping like rent was due in that situation. I said, I know this to be true. All of the people that went to university for computer science all were told do not take computer science courses in high school because a lot of the teachers that are teaching you that are teaching you bad habits that might get the job done, but they're not going to get the job done the way they want to teach it to you in university. And so a lot of university professors want to teach you from scratch their good habits if they know what they're doing. And I said to this guy at HR all of that. And then I said, so if you believe in me and you like me and you guys know what you're doing, then you get to teach me from scratch exactly how you do it. And that's the only way I know.
That's beautiful. Like mic drop.
Yeah, I mean, and he goes, all right, well, I'm going to give you a call tomorrow, but find a place to live in Alberta immediately. And
Amazing.
I was like, all right, cool. I think I have this in the bag at least to get another interview with their head of their company. And I mean, the next day I spoke to him again and the head of the company, and I spoke to the guy, and he's called me before, and he goes, just so you're aware, this is the guy that you got to impress. He's the one that you're going to be working for. I'm just the HR guy. So make sure that you impress the guy and do your thing, and maybe veer a little bit less towards what you're doing with your sister just because he wants to hear about your applicable experience, but
Right.
say everything you said and then some. And halfway through the call, he just like kind of stopped interviewing in a candid, and started speaking more candidly and just said to the head of HR, yeah, just send him an offer.
That's amazing.
And so,
Amazing. Can you expand a little bit more, because I think this is really valuable, about how you took some stuff that wasn't exactly applicable and talked about transferable skills?
And that's like a really difficult thing. Like if you're graduating school or graduating high school, you don't have a ton of work experience to be like, I have 10 years in this industry and I know exactly what I'm doing. And a lot of the experience that I had was just not applicable at all. But that's when my friends were saying, like, you need to reflect more who you are as a person rather than your actual work experience, because they all know me as a person that I'm good to work 24 hours straight if I need to in order to get the job done. But like, that's not really how the digital industry works in terms of like producing content. Like, people work work 9 to 5 and then they go home and then they post. Like, that's just not something that I can sell someone who wants me to work 12, 15, 16 hours a day on, especially in a labor intensive industry. And so, yeah, I thought deep, like a lot, quite a bit about like, how am I going to make this something that I can really figure out. And so some of those transferable skills were like pretty direct to be like, all right, I'm a problem solver here. I could probably solve problems here if you teach me what I'm meant to be doing. So the other questions that they had for me is, okay, you're going to be working in some extreme weather temperatures, not just like a nice brisk day and, the fall when it's like kind of warm, kind of cold, but you're going to be working in an environment where it's either going to be 35, 40 degrees with the humidity and also maybe minus 20, minus 30 with like the wind chill and everything like that in the winter. And there's, no days off and you don't get to just go home when you want to go home. And so I said to him, well, I've been in some extremely cold temperatures in the dead of the winter driving around the U.S. with my dad trying to get to places. And when we get to those motocross races in the South, I am in head to toe 30 extra pounds of gear on top of my body weight. And sometimes, like when we drove to Tennessee, they actually canceled every sporting event other than the national championship that we were at in the state of Tennessee because the record temperature was like 117 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
And so if I can withstand that, I'm sure I can withstand, 35 degrees with the humidity, working, in the oil industry and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, I just had an answer for everything. And the one thing that he said as well, too, is like, all right, like you're eventually going to have to learn how to drive a big vehicle. Have you ever driven more than, just an SUV or a car before? And I said, oh, yeah, that's my bread and butter here. This is my time to shine in terms of like actual transferable experience. But I don't know if my dad or I have ever told this story on the podcast before, but like, my first day driving on the highway without anybody after I got my G2 was driving a C-class motorhome. We weren't breaking any laws.
Maybe didn't share that.
Yeah, no, you're not like, you don't need a license to drive one. If you
Right.
have a G or a G2, like you're able to drive it. But he woke me up at like 10 a.m. on a Friday morning when we were driving to Tennessee as a 16-year-old and goes, hey, dude, I've been driving for the last 12 hours. I'm exhausted. You got to take over because I need to sleep if we want to actually get to Tennessee. And my first day ever driving on the highway after getting my G2 by myself was in a C-class 38-foot motorhome. And I told that to this guy and he goes, all right, well, I don't have a problem with that. Sounds good. So yeah, I mean, it was great. Like everybody that I've spoken to thus far is like, man, you killed it. I had an answer for everything. And they said to me after on a later call, they were like, just so you know, like we're hiring you because we believe in you as a person. That's what got you this job. And I'm super excited to actually put you to work and see if you're really capable of what you're saying you are. And I said to him, I said, just so you know, like I know I've already got the gig, but like I think that anyone who knows me will tell you that I have a lot of heart, and I hope that you see that from every day on. And every single time I show up to work, I'm going to try and benefit you and everybody else that works there, just either in the positive environment that we're in or just straight up doing the work, because at the end of the day, your livelihood is what allows you to provide for your kids and your family and everything like that. So
I think this story like further reiterates as well the importance of athletics and sports in people's lives.
Yes.
And how those skills are so transferable into just life in the workforce in general one day. Like I talk about all the time how I find that the most well-adjusted people and the hardest working people I've ever met have always been athletes growing up. And Kieran has now gone from working in digital media for the last 10 years and into oil and gas and has used his sports experience to get him this job, which is pretty incredible.
yeah, that's one thing that they said too is like, we know you were an athlete from 3 or 4 years old, like riding dirt bikes at that time. And it started to get more serious as time went on, all the way up until I was 19. They were like, we like that. Like that, that might be not direct work experience, but we know that you're capable of, being put under, intense situations and you're going to have to think quickly. And, that's something that we actually think is applicable. It might not be like, oh, I worked at this company and I had this direct experience working in oil and gas, but we care and we see that works. So if your kid's watching this or you're listening to this, tell them to put their sports on their resume because it's a good story. And a lot of people as well too probably played a similar sport, unless you did F1 or something like that. That might be not as applicable. But if you played soccer or hockey or football or basketball, odds are somebody's a fan, and that's a really easy way for them to be like, oh, did you watch the game last night? And then you're just building a genuine connection with that person that's probably going to end up liking you a lot longer in the long run. To go, oh, that guy loves the Raptors as well too, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. I think that that's a really great point because anyone who's a high level athlete at any degree has clearly proven themselves to have dedication, commitment, discipline, teamwork abilities, work ethic, all of those things. And even though they may not be directly transferable to the job you're going into, those are amazing life skills to develop. So we were always huge proponents of making you guys keep your commitments, be in the athletics, and really mean it. I mean, Dad in particular doesn't do anything halfway. There's not a lot of things that he does that just for fun because he wants to enjoy them. He wants to either be the best, he wants you guys to be the best, and he pushed, which is great because look at the amazing people that you've come to be.
Doesn't matter if it was a cheer gym, a gymnastics gym, or a motocross race. He was standing there with his arms crossed near the edge of it, being like, "My kids should be doing better right now, even if we were winning." So yeah,
Fair
no,
enough. Yeah,
he pushed us, but it works, and it's great.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. And I love that you guys are now old enough to reflect on that and see what kind of value that it brought to who you are today and to your life skills. So let's jump ahead a little bit to your leaving home. How are you both feeling about that?
I mean, we've both left before.
Yes, you've been in and out and in and out and in and out. I feel like this is out.
For sure. Like,
for you, for sure.
For sure. Like, first of all, I don't live at home currently.
No.
Just to clarify that I'm not living in the house. We're living in the same city.
Yeah. For clarity, though, you come and go several times a week in and out of the house. We work together and we go by your other place of work. I literally almost see you daily.
Oh my gosh,
so you don't
yeah.
physically sleep in our house or live in our house, but I speak to you daily.
Yes.
And I see you pretty much either every day or every other day. So it's a big hole for me.
Yeah.
I get it.
But it's a hole that has existed in the past.
Yeah.
And healed okay.
Yeah,
Healed
it
just
was
fine.
I got
It's
used
just,
to being at university or being in Florida or whatnot.
But there was always an end date.
Right. This
like
is
it was
permanent.
Yeah.
You're moving away to start your own family and fully launch and be independent in another province.
Yes.
This is like
this is
final.
it. Like this is adulthood. This is we're here. And I think the biggest thing that I've been trying to like mindset shift about this entire thing is like I am leaving my family ultimately, but going forward, Maz is my family.
I know.
And like that's making me tear up. Like Maz is my person now that I am going to build a life and build children with.
He was my person before, and she took him.
You gave him to
That's
me.
true.
Let's be clear. So I'm not leaving my family. I'm going somewhere else to begin my family. And like I think that's like the hardest like mindset shift. Me and my mom are both crying right now. So it just feels very like surreal to be like, okay, yes, these people who I've known my entire life and nurtured me and like created me. This is the first time I'm crying about this. Made me the person I am today. I now get to go take all those life skills and test them and create new people.
The trailer for this episode is gonna go crazy.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about it, but it feels like, yeah, this is it. Like this is
I'm trying to mindset shift as well is our family is growing and spreading its roots and its wings. And I adore Maz, and I'm delighted that he will be part of our life forever. And eventually there'll be offspring from that. And so
I can't wait for offspring. I'm so excited.
So it's beautiful that our family is growing. They're just growing a little farther away than I'd like them to be. And Kieran, how are you feeling about leaving home?
Fine. Well, I mean, that was the one thing that I was going to say is I still have obligations here. And if you know me at all, you know I like to make things way more complicated than they need to be.
That's true.
So instead of commuting, so actually backing up a little bit, I lived in England when I was 16.
Yeah.
Like I graduated high school a year early, and then I lived in Georgia for a year after that. And then a year after that, I lived in Arkansas, and then my racing career ended, and then I moved home. And I was home for about 2.5 years actually at your guys' home, all the way up until like 7 or 8 months into COVID. And then I moved and started my time at Queens, which is now entering its 5th year because my first year was part-time. But for the last 3.5 years, I lived away up until pretty much 1 year ago. And then I moved back in with you guys because things downtown Kingston aren't that cheap anymore.
Right.
And I really didn't feel like cleaning up a disgusting home that 7 other people were living in all the time because I was the one that would clean everything. And I figured, it'd be kind of nice to be able to commute into town every single day. And there are pros and cons to that because you kind of feel disconnected. But I have a really good friend group at Queens, and I don't feel left out of anything. And I just stay at their house whenever I feel like it. So very grateful for that. And I mean, I now have to, instead of, this is insane that I'm saying this, and maybe we use this for the trailer or not, but imagine having to commute 30 minutes into the university that you go to, comparing yourself to the student that just has to walk a block to go to class. I will now theoretically be commuting from Alberta to go to class. And what I mean by that is I have 1 year left. Most of my courses are going to be online, which means I can do them while I'm out there, which is great, but some of them are not. And my rotation that I'm working is going to be 15 days on, 6 days off. And basically what's going to be happening is I'm going to finish my rotation and then fly from Alberta back to Ontario and go to class for 3 or 4 days, present what I've been doing in there that are like my projects and stuff like that, and then fly back to Alberta and start my job again. And that's going to be what my final year of school is. And I'm going to check in all my friends at other schools and, you know, hang out and go do my things in my 6 days off. And maybe I end up documenting that at some point as content for stuff that Sarah Marie and I are doing. So, yeah, you guys might see it. You might see how insane that is. But imagine, like, I was talking to someone who lives in Savannah, Georgia right now, and he was like, how far is Alberta away from where you live? And I said, let me put it this way. And I Google Mapped it while we were on Zoom, and I said to him, it's twice as long for me to go to where I'm going than it is for me to go visit you in Georgia right now. It's like 1,500 kilometers from Kingston to where he is. It is 3,000 kilometers away that I'll be commuting from. But, you know, round trip flights from Edmonton to Toronto or Ottawa are like $200. So
fantastic.
in the grand scheme of things, not that expensive compared to $1,000 flight, you know.
So your intention, though, is to build your life out there
100%.
and stay out there. So eventually you will also put down roots. You'll probably find a nice lady. You'll probably have children.
I found her and she left me in December.
That's a whole other podcast.
I'm leaving this in.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever.
That's a whole nother podcast. But this is your intention as well, is to make this your life and where you put down your roots and be
100%.
there indefinitely.
Yes.
So this is, call it the final moves for both of you, because like we said, you've both been in and out, different iterations of where you've been at your life. But I feel like this is probably it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm for sure moving out there, and the first thing that I'm going to is like going to a spin class and just handing out my resume to a woman, being like, "Husband?" question mark.
You might find somebody.
Yeah, I know. Probably it'll be funny. And so yeah, I'm going out there, and the plan would be to be able to like get a home or a condo at some point in the next 2 to 3 years, assuming I love the job, and I think I'm going to. Like I'm very confident that I'm going to, based on what I know and what I've been doing so far. So yeah, I'm very excited for that, and it's going to be something that, yeah, you're going to have to travel if you want to see Sarah Marie and I from pretty much here on out, which we'll come back and see you, but I know you'll want to come out and see us
I'll
as
be
well
out
too.
there. Don't you worry.
Because, yeah, it's going to be a crazy time.
So from my perspective, because this is a new era in our lives then, and a new chapter in our lives, and I have very mixed emotions about it. So thankfully, Dad and I are very solid, and we're very happy together, and we have lots of fun, and we have a great friend group, and we're well entrenched in the community, and we're doing all sorts of silly things together. So we're good. And we get along better when we're alone, which is a funny thing to say, and I know we've said it to both of you, but the minute you throw another person in the mix, or one of you saying to me, "Do you know what your husband said?" and him saying, "Do you know what your child said?" it gets a little bit more complicated. So it's generally very easy. We don't have anything to argue about other than, what do you want to watch on TV tonight? And mostly my answer is, I don't care, I'm about to fall asleep. So he usually wins, but we're pretty solid. So we're excited about our newfound freedom again. Not that you guys have been any work in the last couple of years, but that is a different era for us. We very likely in the next couple of years will downsize the house. We don't need a 5-bedroom house on a big property that is a lot of work to take care of. And I also want to free up some cash flow so that I can travel to see you every weekend if I want to.
Just so you can come to the raging fun city of Moose Jaw.
Right. But I do know that if you're out there too long, there'll be grandchildren born in Moose Jaw. So that
What else am I going to do?
Right?
I might as well have
You
children.
may as well make babies and raise them in Moose Jaw.
Yes.
So I think it's okay. I'm sad in the sense that I'm going to try not to cry, but it makes me sad to think we'll never, all 4 of us, live under the same roof again in any sort of permanent situation. And hopefully it's not a pandemic that forces it, but we'll never.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe the world ends.
Maybe.
There's a zombie apocalypse. We have to all like get
Live
under one
together.
shelter. Could be super fun. You never know.
Optimistically, though, you guys move on with your lives and you're super successful. And I'm so incredibly proud of the amazing people that you've both grown up to be. honestly, and I know Dad and I have said this before, we had no idea what we were doing. We were just winging it. And somehow
Clearly.
we made really successful, kind, good, hardworking people out of you both. And yeah, I'm going to cry as you both drive away. However, actually, a really good friend of mine said something to me yesterday, which stuck with me ever since then. It was just yesterday, but I wanted to kind of use it as our close. Is she said, our job as parents is to give our kids wings and then to be okay with our success.
I mean, to leave it at that, no matter how far Sam Marie and I go, we will always be the kids at the foot of your bed playing. So
I know. I have nothing else to close with. Awkward.
That's all, folks. Thank you. We're all going to go cry now.